When my HOA's resident tyrant started secretly stealing electricity from my outdoor outlet to charge her ATV, I decided enough was enough. So I built a custom circuit that didn't just stop her, it fried her setup and flipped the entire neighborhood against her. When I bought my house in a quiet, pine-lined neighborhood just outside town, I thought I'd finally left all the chaos of city living behind me. No more shared walls, no more mystery sounds at 3 a.m., no more missing Amazon packages. Just a garage, a little garden space, and the kind of silence you can only get when your neighbors are more than 6 feet away. I didn't know then that my greatest source of stress wouldn't come from traffic or rent, but from someone named Karen who lived 2 houses down and treated our HOA like her personal kingdom. She introduced herself on my second day with a clipboard and a smile that never reached her eyes. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she chirped, while also reminding me, within the same breath, not to plant anything non-native in the front yard or leave my trash bins out past 8 a.m. on Mondays. I thought, okay, classic HOA busybody, whatever. I'd dealt with worse. I didn't realize I was looking into the eyes of a full-blown tyrant with passive-aggressive powers honed to a razor's edge. At first, it was just the little things. Notes on my door about the hedge being a 1/4 inch over HOA regulation height. A complaint filed because my porch light was too bright and interfered with nocturnal pollinators. I wish I were joking. But I could handle that. I'm a pretty chill guy. I kept my lawn trimmed, my trash bins tucked in, and mostly ignored the unnecessary micromanagement. The turning point came 4 months after I moved in, when my power bill spiked from its usual $120 to almost $390. I chalked it up to a billing mistake at first, or maybe I'd left the AC on during that one heat wave. But then it happened again the next month and the next, each time just high enough to be suspicious, but not high enough to trigger a fraud alert or a utility investigation. So I did what any logical person would do. I started sleuthing. I checked all my appliances, made sure nothing was running 24/7, unplugged every charger, turned off surge protectors. I even had the power company send someone out to inspect the meter, which came back functioning normally. And yet, the bills kept bleeding me dry. It wasn't until one random Saturday while I was trimming the hedge that I noticed something weird. An orange extension cord peeking out from under a loose garden tile near the side of my garage. At first, I thought it was mine, maybe from an old project I'd forgotten, but as I followed it, ducking down and parting shrubs like a dollar store detective, it snaked its way across the dividing fence, beneath a camouflage panel of pine straw, and into the side yard of none other than Karen's house. There, behind a wooden lattice, under a sad old tarp, was a 4-wheeler ATV with a charger humming softly and connected to my power. She'd literally been plugging into my external outlet, hidden from view behind some strategically placed bushes, and stealing my electricity to charge her toy. I stood there, dumbfounded for a solid 30 seconds. Then the anger hit, not just because of the theft, but because of how slick and intentional the whole setup was. This wasn't a one-time accident or a lazy nephew moment. This was theft. Period. I unplugged the extension cord immediately, coiled it like a dead snake, and walked straight over to her porch, where I dropped it on the welcome mat with a bright yellow sticky note. "Next time, ask." I thought that would be the end of it. But of course, with people like Karen, it never is. Later that afternoon, she rang my doorbell, wearing what I can only describe as her apology outfit: khakis, a pastel cardigan, and that same tight, forced smile. "Hey neighbor," she started, overly cheerful. "I saw you found the cord." Oh gosh, that must have been my nephew. He's always getting into stuff, and I cut her off with a look. "Karen," I said, "you don't have a nephew." She blinked, stammered, then doubled down. "Well, not my nephew, more like my friend's kid. He visits sometimes. Anyway, it won't happen again." And with that, she turned on her heel and walked away before I could call out the blatant lie. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, just one last time, but a week later, I noticed my bill hadn't gone down at all. Suspicious, I walked the side path again, and sure enough, the orange cord was back. This time she'd gotten sneakier, ran it beneath a bed of mulch, staked it down with wire clips, and positioned her trash cans in such a way to hide the connection point on her end. It was bold, almost impressive, but mostly it was infuriating. So I took a step further. I bought a motion-activated, weatherproof security camera and mounted it just above the outlet. Within 2 days, I had crystal-clear footage of Karen herself, in full gardening gear, plugging the ATV into my power source in broad daylight like she was doing something as harmless as watering the petunias. With video evidence in hand, I figured it was time to report her to the HOA. Surely, I thought this would be the line even they wouldn't tolerate being crossed. I sent a respectful email, attached the footage, and even offered timestamps. A few days later, instead of resolution, I got an official letter on HOA letterhead accusing me of violating neighborhood codes. Unauthorized installation of exterior monitoring equipment. It read, followed by a threat of fines if I didn't remove the camera within 72 hours. I couldn't believe it. That's when I did some digging and realized Karen wasn't just in the HOA. She was the HOA. President, secretary, and treasurer all rolled into one. She controlled the board meetings, manipulated voting schedules, and basically ran the neighborhood like her own private fiefdom. I took down the camera, publicly anyway, but by now I knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to stop stealing power, and I couldn't count on anyone else to hold her accountable. So I decided I'd take matters into my own hands. Not with confrontation. That clearly wouldn't work. No, I was going to fight fire with circuit boards. I started researching, slowly and obsessively. Reading forums, watching videos on electrical traps, talking to friends in IT. Not to fry her ATV or hurt anyone, of course. That wasn't the goal. I just wanted to make it very, very inconvenient for her to ever plug into my outlet again. By this point, I wasn't just angry. I was determined. I started keeping a journal of every time I saw her ATV plugged in. I ran simulations of different circuit setups using spare parts from old projects in my garage. I even started timing when she usually did her charging, just to avoid any accidental interference with anything else on my system. What started as frustration had morphed into something more surgical. She thought she could manipulate the rules and the board and my patience. But she'd underestimated one thing. I'm stubborn as hell, and I know my way around wires. And Karen? She was about to learn the hard way that sometimes the best way to deal with a parasite is to give it something truly shocking to chew on. Once I committed to retaliating with a bit of old-school ingenuity, it was like a switch flipped in my brain. I wasn't just the guy trying to get through his days in peace anymore. I was the guy plotting a flawless, wire-based middle finger to the neighborhood tyrant. And let me be clear, I wasn't trying to ruin anyone's life or cause real damage. I just wanted the theft to stop, and I wanted Karen to feel the weight of her own audacity. A little bit of poetic justice, clean, controlled, and undeniable. First, I had to make sure I understood the limits of what I could do without violating any actual laws. I spent a couple of late nights with a glass of whiskey in one hand and a Reddit rabbit hole open on the screen, diving into tales of similar passive-aggressive showdowns. Turns out, there's a whole subculture of homeowners who've dealt with everything from shared driveways to actual neighbor espionage. Compared to some of them, I was a saint. After ruling out anything dangerous, no, I wasn't about to wire my outlet to explode like a Bond villain. I landed on something called a sacrificial feedback loop circuit, basically a clever little setup that could detect if a foreign load was connected, and if so, feed a nasty but non-lethal voltage spike back through the line. It wouldn't hurt a person, but it would absolutely fry the charger or trip the breaker, especially if the device wasn't properly grounded. In short, Karen would plug her ATV in, and her setup would eat itself. Beautiful. Now, the challenge was making it look accidental. I didn't want her knocking on my door with more fake apologies and HOA citations. I wanted her confused, disoriented, and, most of all, stuck with a broken toy and no one to blame but herself. So I modified a dummy power strip with a disguised relay switch that would activate the moment any voltage draw over a set amount occurred from the outdoor outlet. It took me 3 nights, a few singed fingertips, and a nostalgic trip to Radio Shack. Yes, there's still one open nearby, but I eventually had my little Frankenstein circuit ready to go. Before installing it, I decided to give her one final out. One last chance to stop being the worst person in the zip code. I caught her while she was doing her usual walk around the neighborhood with a little notebook in hand, presumably listing which neighbors needed to mow their lawns half a centimeter shorter. "Hey, Karen," I said, friendly tone, no bite. She turned and raised her eyebrows like I'd interrupted something vital. "I noticed my outlet's been in use again. I really hope we're not having another nephew situation." Her face stayed frozen for a moment before she gave me the tightest, fakest smile I've ever seen. "Oh, that? I have no idea what you're talking about," she said, not even bothering to pretend this time. "You might want to check your wiring. Sounds like you've got some kind of fault if you're losing power." That smug little line was the final nail. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. And that meant I no longer had to hide my response, either, at least not from her. The next evening, under the cover of dusk, I installed my circuit. From the outside, it looked like a simple weatherproof outlet box, same as the one that had been there before. But inside, my little revenge device sat patiently, waiting. To make it sweeter, I added a timed reset, meaning she could plug in once, trip the circuit, and then think it was safe to try again, only for the system to fry her stuff a second time. After all, she liked patterns. She liked taking without asking. So I gave her a new pattern to learn. And oh, did she learn. The following morning, I left early for work, but not before checking the footage from my newly relocated security camera, this time hidden in a solar-powered bird feeder I'd picked up online. Sure enough, there she was at 7:42 a.m., wearing her pink garden gloves, looking around like a cartoon villain, and plugging that familiar orange extension cord right into my outlet. Her face looked relaxed, casual, like someone tossing laundry into a dryer. She was so comfortable stealing from me, it was practically routine. And then, about 12 seconds later, the charger on the ATV gave a little pop. Not a spark, not a flame, just a subtle internal fizz followed by a curl of smoke rising from the cable housing. She jumped back like it had bitten her. Her mouth opened into an O of shock, and she frantically yanked the plug from my outlet. Then she started looking around, as if expecting someone to leap out from behind the hedges and accuse her. She unplugged everything, kicked a rock, and stormed back inside. That alone would have been satisfying. But the best part came that evening when I returned home and found a new letter taped to my door. No envelope, just a single piece of printer paper with all caps text that screamed, "You're going to pay for that." No signature, but come on, who else would it be? I laughed out loud, because I had paid for resistors and wire and a few rolls of black electrical tape. About $28 in total, and it was worth every penny. I knew she'd try again. She always did. So I waited. 2 days later, she came back, this time with a brand new charger. I recognized it as one of the higher-end ones, maybe $150 retail, and plugged in again. I watched it in real time on my phone app. 10 seconds later, another subtle pop, and she jumped back, furious. This time, she didn't just unplug. She took the entire cord, flung it over her fence, and stormed into her house. The camera caught her mouthing a very colorful word and shaking her fists at the sky. And just like that, the theft stopped. The next week, there was an emergency HOA meeting, called by Karen, of course. The flyer said it was to address inappropriate electrical conduct and safety concerns regarding resident-installed hardware. I showed up, quietly, took a seat in the back, and let her ramble for 20 minutes about how someone was sabotaging electrical infrastructure in the neighborhood and creating hazards for shared use spaces. A couple of residents asked what she meant, but she never named names because she had no proof. Not a shred. Just 2 dead chargers, a bruised ego, and a mysterious outdoor outlet that no longer worked the way she wanted. After the meeting, one of the newer neighbors, a cool guy named Alex, came up to me and said, "Hey, was she talking about you?" I just shrugged. No clue, man. Sounds like someone's got faulty wiring. We both laughed. Karen still lives here, of course. Still walks the neighborhood with her little clipboard. But now, she gives me a wide berth. She never mentions the outlet. Never files another complaint against me. She's even been oddly polite lately, tossing in a passive-aggressive nice weather we're having when she passes me in the driveway. It's like she knows she lost. Not just the free electricity, but the game. And me? I sleep great these days. No more weird charges on my power bill. No more mystery cords behind my garage. Just sweet, smug satisfaction. And oh yeah, I've still got the camera in the bird feeder. Just in case. After the second charger incident, things went suspiciously quiet on Karen's end. No cords, no more mysterious power drains. Not even one of her signature fake smile visits. It felt like the calm after a storm, unnaturally still like the eye of a hurricane. But I knew better. Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat. She was more like a slow-brewing volcano, too proud to admit she'd lost, but simmering beneath the surface, planning something petty, dramatic, or both. So I didn't let my guard down. I checked the outlet regularly, reviewed the security footage every couple of days, even updated my setup, adding a second layer to the trap, a decoy plug that looked like it was re-enabled but was really just a looped circuit with zero output. A decoy for the decoy. At this point, it was less about revenge and more like sport. Then, about a week later, she struck again, this time with drama. I was pulling weeds out front when I heard the unmistakable sound of yelling coming from the side of her house. I leaned against the rake handle and casually listened. She was on the phone, pacing up and down her porch like a general at war. No, it's deliberate sabotage. He rigged it. I know he did. This is harassment, electrical terrorism, or something. I want this escalated. I couldn't hear the other end of the call, but from the way she kept repeating herself and getting louder, it was clear no one was taking her seriously. Eventually, she slammed her phone shut and threw it on a patio chair like a toddler denied candy. I saw her glance in my direction, and for the first time since all of this started, she didn't look smug. She looked rattled, out of control, cornered. And that's when the real shift began, not just between her and me, but in the entire neighborhood. People had always tolerated Karen. She was a fixture. Annoying, yes, but consistent. The HOA queen. But when she started bringing her grievances public, saying things like someone's hacking my property or booby-trapping the community power grid, folks began to realize maybe she wasn't just strict, maybe she was just nuts. I heard from my neighbor across the street, Alice, that Karen had tried to organize a door-to-door petition to ban unauthorized electrical setups and require HOA approval for outlets. Alice laughed in her face and closed the door before she finished her sentence. Another neighbor, Paul, retired, handy, loves his woodworking tools, actually came over with a beer and asked if I could show him how to booby-trap his outdoor plugs too. Word had gotten around, clearly. I never confirmed anything, of course, but I didn't deny it either. At this point, Karen had torched her own credibility with the subtlety of a dumpster fire. Then came a cherry on top, the HOA audit. Apparently, a couple of new residents had filed formal complaints about the way Karen had been managing funds and rule enforcement. They'd noticed inconsistencies in how she handled fines, how certain houses always got warnings while others, hers, mostly, were left alone. Someone even accused her of using HOA funds to purchase landscaping equipment for her own yard, allegedly reimbursed as community beautification expenses. The HOA board, which she used to run like a one-woman show, was suddenly full of new voices, younger folks, people with actual careers and backgrounds in legal compliance. I like to think I inspired a few of them to step up. When the audit results came in, it was low-key explosive. There were receipts that didn't match invoices, fines levied without documentation, and, most hilariously, records of reimbursements for maintenance on shared equipment that turned out to be parts for her ATV. She tried to play it off in a meeting, blaming the treasurer, herself, and claiming it was an honest accounting mistake. But the damage was done. The board voted unanimously to remove her from the presidency, place a temporary freeze on her authority, and launch an internal restructure. She didn't speak during the vote. She just sat there, arms crossed, lips pressed so tightly they looked blue. The very next day, her precious ATV disappeared from the side yard. Not sold, not moved to a garage. Gone. I overheard her telling someone over the fence that it had mysteriously shorted out beyond repair, and she had to scrap it. Oh, how I wish I had that conversation on video. She didn't retaliate after that. Not directly. No more letters, no passive-aggressive stares, not even a clipboard in hand. I think she finally understood that I wasn't just another pushover homeowner she could bully into compliance. More importantly, she'd lost the one thing that gave her power, her image. The neighborhood had seen her for who she was. Not a protector of rules, but a manipulative, power-hungry thief. Over time, the air in the neighborhood changed. People seemed lighter. It sounds weird, but you could feel it. The new HOA board started sending out friendly newsletters instead of warning slips. Block parties popped up. Someone organized a tool-sharing program. I got invited to join a Friday beer and barbecue circle by the guys 2 streets over, who said, "We heard you know how to handle power tools in more ways than one." As for me, I never took down the decoy circuit. It's still there, quiet, functional, waiting. Not out of spite anymore, but as a reminder, a little trophy, if you will. And every now and then, I catch Karen giving it a nervous glance as she walks by with her dog. Her dog's nice, actually. Probably the only thing in that house that doesn't lie. Last month, I was out on my driveway when she walked by and actually stopped. Just for a second. She looked like she wanted to say something. Maybe an apology. Maybe one last dig. But in the end, she just gave a nod, muttered, "Nice yard," and kept walking. I stood there in the sun, hands in my pockets, watching her retreat. Not a winner by conquest, but by attrition. Because that's what real justice is sometimes. Not the knockout punch, but the slow, undeniable realization that your kingdom has crumbled beneath your feet and nobody's coming to help you rebuild. And as far as I'm concerned, that's better than any fine, any lawsuit, any confrontation. She stole power from me, and I gave her a lesson in what real power actually looks like.